So look, the 2012 disease outlook depends on the inoculum basically, and I've sort of split this up into, Kith and I have split this up into sort of two groups. And I'm going to go do this slide back to front. There's the diseases that are there every year, but you know, maybe last year's level impacts a little bit on what happens this year. So, you know, barley powdery mildew one at the moment is one that we along the south coast and the western areas of the wheat belt. It's an every year occurrence. Depending on the situation throughout the year, then the level of disease that expressed will change. I'm putting Canola Sclerotinia, particularly in the northern ag region, into this belt. Basically, it's a disease now which the inoculum is present all the time. What happens during the season will determine how much disease we get. Yellow spot, Septoria nodorum, we can add net botch into here, but we heard yesterday about you know, big crops in the northern ag region, which means there's a lot of stubble around. There was disease on those crops. So definitely those diseases are, you know, a chance for this year. I mean, we still need the rainfall and things like that, but those are those sort of crops. I mean, other diseases that fit into that would be crown rot, certainly one in which inoculum is present all the time, and seasonal variability will influence that. Probably the major thing that we wanted to talk about this morning was the diseases which their occurrence is somewhat more sporadic. So the diseases which were damaging last year in your region, and the two diseases I particularly want to point out here are barley leaf rust, which occurs relatively regularly but is still sporadic across the south coast, and wheat stem rust, which certainly occurred across the south coast and through the lakes region last year. And the reason why I'm particularly interested in those is that the outlook for those diseases obviously depends both on the presence of inoculum last year, but the over-summer weather conditions which favour the survival of the inoculum. So what we know is if we have a look at the rainfall, the sort of deciles from November to January last year, that there was a lot of rain at the end of last year, which really means that things like stem rust in particular would have been perpetuating in that green regrowth that occurred at the end of the year, delaying harvest in a lot of areas. We know that stem rust and barley leaf rust are quite capable of perpetuating in those warmer conditions. So the period between the end of last year and the start of this year has diminished. And there was certainly rainfall still occurring in January in a lot of areas. This is a slide that I just received this morning. Plant available soil moisture as at 15th Feb this year, and as far as I'm aware there hasn't been a lot of contributions further to that. Basically, pink, purple and blue means there's moisture there supporting plant growth most probably. What that's showing us is that there's plenty of moisture in the ground that's probably going to be supporting that green bridge that a lot of people have been talking about. Green bridge possibly supporting rust inoculum, which means that we're certainly suggesting that rust diseases of cereals could be a risk this year. Last year in May, Kith Jayasena found those plants on the left there harbouring stem rust, and by the end of last year, particularly through the south coast and lakes region, there was certainly a follow-on of rust resulting from that. God, I can't get the buttons. And I think I'll just continue on quickly. The other thing that really does affect the risk this year is your variety choice. So, you know, stem rust, popular susceptible varieties that might be at significant risk, I think the popular variety that might be at risk is Yitpi, but other varieties like Calingary, Westonia, certainly risk varieties, and Kith will talk about some options for in-season management. Basically, we need to retain the opportunity to do that. Barley leaf rust, popular malt varieties at significant risk. That name keeps popping up, doesn't it? Bodan there again, certainly a risk for leaf rust. Powdery mildew, oh look, powdery mildew, highest risk southern and western high rainfall zones. Again, we know the varieties that are risk varieties. So that's already a component of risk for us. If we're planning to grow those susceptible varieties, we are going to be needing to think about what we do in terms of management or looking to alter our variety profile. And I'll let Kith move on with some management options from here.
By now, you all should have got frequently asked questions for barley powdery mildew. And this morning there is another fact sheet has come from GRDC on barley powder mildew control. So what can we do for next few months? So we will talk about managing green bridge, fungicide threat on seeds for mildew control, choose resistant varieties or diseases, assign less susceptible varieties to risk-prone areas, budget for this season for some of the diseases like stem rust, leaf rust and mildew in the south coast. So what you should do to manage the stem rust? That is one of the diseases on cereal rust, which have a high impact on yield losses. So these rusts survive on the living plants. So green bridge is very important and they thrive very well on susceptible varieties. So try to reduce the amount of green bridge that harboring the stem rust. For example, barley regrowth can harbor wheat stem rust, then susceptible wheat varieties. For this season, avoid using susceptible varieties. Fortunately, for some reason, if the farmers trying to grow susceptible varieties, then they should put some money aside for use fungicides. But we got a good spectrum of resistance available on wheat varieties, especially grown across WA. And spray fungicide on susceptible varieties first you've seen. I'll give a good example. These are the products we have tested last year. This trial shows when we saw stem rust last year at Gibson, just spraying on one application of fungicide. T1 stands for first application, T2 means 3 weeks after follow-up spray. For first application, we have used Tilt Extra Prosaro, Folica, and second spray with Folica. And it shows clearly application of, no sooner you see the disease, application of fungicide can increase the yield up to 30%. If you have 2 sprays, you can have a yield increase about 56%. That location, the yield was ranging from 1.59 to 2.48. And these are the economics of it. When you calculate, if you analyze the quality on that trial, the 2 spray all fitted into AUH2 category based on the protein level. It had 13% protein. The rest all had 11%. So there is a big increase. What I want to say here is, by just application, for example, Folica, you get $83 profit. By giving 3 sprays and grain quality improvement, you can have nearly $400 per hectare profit. So managing barley leaf rust, reduce green bridge, avoid susceptible varieties, in-furrow seed dressing which used for mildew can be used, but these products are not registered. So if you are using susceptible varieties, then you have to use spraying at later stage. And like stem rust, with the first visible symptoms you spray and spray follow-up spray 3 to 4 weeks later. This is a good example. This shows, do we have to spray to control stem rust, leaf rust? And yes, by application of jockey with 2 sprays on susceptible variety can increase the yield from 1.6 to 3.5 to 3.8. That blue one is the Bodan, the red one is the YBAR 2537, which has the adult plant resistance on for leaf rust. So there it was not affected. So right throughout 4.1 to 4.5. So these ones, and where you use the fungicides on Bodan had give a good returns. Managing barley powdery mildew, you all have heard a lot of things yesterday, and this morning the speakers talk about it is a problem. It can be controlled by switching the susceptible, very susceptible varieties to moderately susceptible varieties to reduce the impact of the inoculum buildup, and by using proper fungicide. We know that from last year's results with high disease pressure, powdery mildew can be successfully managed at early stages by using products like fluconazole. For example, it's sold as Jockey. But this table, this is the risk matrix. I think Geoff talked about yesterday about it, and I'm not going to go much detail into that. But when you are using Jockey, remember to use smiticides too to go with, because we have seen in the south coast also, like Geoff Frosby saw in central region, the level of smut has increased. So use some smiticide with the Jockey for reduce the buildup of smut infected. And the most important things in this risk matrix, what sort of selection you have, and once you go to lower risk areas, you can get away with only using smiticides like Betan for everything control, because it's less prone for mildew. So what are the foliar effective fungicides available? There are range of new generation DMI fungicide and strobilurin based products, DMI fungicides, epoxyconazole, proconazole, and strobilurin products like Amistra Extra and Opora. But remember not to use the strobilurin based products if it's a blown up disease condition, because in Europe they have seen that strobilurin can increase its efficacy can decrease by building resistance for strobilurin.